Hello and Happy New Year. I'm Jessica Lombard, proud Superintendent of Huntley Community School District 158, and we're excited to be back for yet another episode of Raider Roundtable. In education today, we have the incredible opportunity to take our youth and prepare them for success in the ever-changing world around them. Does education look different today than it did in the past? That answer is both yes and no. Our students are still working through and building foundational content skills that we did in the past. However, are they accessing information differently? Are our instructional strategies different? And are they able to show mastery in different ways? That answer is yes. Our students today are different than they had been in the past, and we need to meet them where they're at. Today, we are so excited to be talking about personalized learning pathways here in Huntley 158. And who would be a better guest than our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Amy MacCrindle, to talk with us about just that. Welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Amy, introduce that you are the Assistant Superintendent in charge of learning and innovation, specifically in our curriculum and instruction area. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your experience and what that role really entails?
Absolutely. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm honored to be the Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Innovation for Huntley School District 158. I was reflecting on this, and I've been here for 7 years. I'm coming up on my 7th year. Prior to going into administration, I started as a middle school teacher. I taught language arts and social studies. I then had a little bit of time as an instructional coach, and then was able to be an assistant principal at a middle school. I served as a principal at an elementary school, and then I've had almost 10 years in curriculum.
You have that
exciting.
expertise.
I have. So in my role, I have the honor and privilege of working with a magnificent team of directors, which are both within our curriculum area as well as our special services area. And we collaborate with our building principals, many of our teachers, many of our department chairs, our other leaders throughout the district to help design and support our students in their learning. And so day in and day out, we talk about what are our kids doing and what is the learning and how can we get better and how do we make sure that we are preparing them for the future. And, I get to go home every day thinking about we did something great for kids and to get to work with a fantastic team to really design that.
So I talked a little bit in the introduction that education has changed and there are still some similarities. Can you talk about what are some of those changes that we have seen in education over the last few years and why did we have to make those changes?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes we have is education is no longer a one-size-fits-all approach. We have really tried to differentiate our learning and the opportunities we provide for our students because our students are different. You said that in your intro. The kids that we have in front of us today are different than the kids that were here 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20, 50 years ago. And so we have started to really make some shifts in that. What that means is that we have focused our efforts in providing experiences where students are able to think through their own interests, the way that they learn, how they will be ready for the future. I think that that's a huge part to this. And it's changed the way that we design our learning experiences for kids, as well as the way our learning environments look. Our classrooms don't look the same today as they did even, 10, 15 years ago.
So when we talk about that, some things need to change, right? There are going to be times that we have our own personal interests. We still need to understand and learn how to read. We still need to learn our mathematical facts. There are still things in science and social studies and inquiry that we need to learn. So we're still doing those things. We're just doing those different because this generation learns and accesses information differently. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned this in your intro, Ms. Lombard, but the approach that we do this, the instructional strategies that our teachers implement on a day-to-day basis are what have really changed. So we are intentional in making sure that kids have opportunities to problem solve, to collaborate, to work together, to struggle, to put some real-world engaging experiences in front of them so that then when they're learning math and they're learning literacy and science and social studies, it's more connected and something that they would be able to apply in the future.
We hear that often. I remember thinking that as a student, when am I ever going to use this? We have now opportunities where they're seeing that on a regular basis of, I need to learn this mathematical concept, and here's how it's going to help me in the future. Here's why I'm working sometimes individually or sometimes with a team, because those are going to be skills that they may need in that future.
Absolutely. If you were to walk into any of our classrooms right now at whatever grade level, preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, light, you're going to see kids talking. You're going to see groups working together. You're going to see teachers instructing and supporting students. But we've really put that focus on how do we best create those environments so that kids are able to learn.
When I use the words personalized learning pathways, it doesn't mean that I, as a student, get to decide what I want to learn all the time, right? We still have our standards by grade levels in our content areas that we expect, and those things need to build on one another. But what does that personalized learning opportunity really mean? What does that look like at our different levels?
Yeah, so when we talk about personalized learning, I think if we go back to even Huntley, about I'd say 13 years ago, began our one-to-one rollout. We were the first district, the largest district, to do a one-to-one rollout with our students. I believe 2016 was a year the high school ended up doing their Chromebooks, and before that, the elementaries had started with some tablets. I think when at first the idea was personalized learning would be more technology-based. It would be, let's utilize our devices to help us be able to learn. We have since reflected and said that technology is one piece to the puzzle of how we can help support our students and learning. And so because of that, it's more about the structures that we put in place. So as you look at elementary, what that personalized learning looks like is we want to help our students begin to recognize how they learn best. And that begins even in kindergarten. If you were to walk into a kindergarten classroom today, you're going to see a time where kids are engaging in reading, in math, but then purposeful play, where they're sitting there and they're having conversations with their peers, and they might be playing store, and they might be arguing over, I wanted to buy that banana, but you took it from me before I could. They might be exchanging some money and currency, but we're doing that in a way because for them, they're learning in a real world way that's purposeful, but it's personalized to them while still teaching those skills.
Before heading into middle school, and what does that look like? Recently, we have made some shifts with what mathematics looks like in the classroom at our elementary level. Talk about that, because that dialogue and the conversation that is happening is a little bit different than we were used to in kind of practicing X number of the same type of problem. But it has really changed how students feel about math, their foundational skills that they're getting, and what we see when we go into the classroom. Is that personalized learning?
It absolutely is. So when we think about math, what has changed in our instruction when it comes to elementary math specifically, it's more about the approaches that students are doing. So when you walk in, you're going to see kids engaging in problems. They're going to be game-based. It's going to be engaging to students, but the teacher is instructing on the standards. They are walking around giving feedback and saying, this is what might need to change. We're still assessing student skills, but because we are able to take a problem-based approach, which is something that's real world that kids are going to need to be able to master. We do it every day in our jobs, Ms. Lombard. It's problems. We have to be able to figure out how to solve those. And so when you walk into our elementary classrooms, you're going to see that with math. And so in elementary, instead of having separate subjects of literacy, math, science, social studies, we have been very intentional, the director team and our principals, of creating units and then also providing materials so that teachers will be able to embed the literacy learning in science and social studies content.
And you're really seeing that interconnectedness. You're
Yes.
seeing more transfer because those things are taught through one another rather than in separate silos and isolation.
Absolutely. And what's so exciting about that is because we did that work about 6 years ago, we were actually out ahead of some of the work that the Illinois Literacy Plan 2 years ago started pushing. And so we started providing those personalized experiences for our kids earlier on, and we're seeing the impact of that.
Awesome. Now let's jump up to our middle school level. What does personalized learning opportunities? What do those pathways look like for our middle school students?
Yeah, so in middle school, students have opportunities to choose maybe what their exploratories might be. So within their day, they're taking science, they're taking social studies, math, literacy, and then they have options of taking some different exploratory classes within arts, within music, with band, choir, orchestra, within our communications area. STEM is a huge part of that. And so when we get to middle school, it's more about after kids have learned this is how I learn, they get to start focusing on what I want to learn. Some of the future work that we have to do is in connection with the state of Illinois has rolled out a PACE framework. It's a college and career readiness framework. We want to be more intentional and involved in building in some of those opportunities for students in middle school to start to know themselves better, but then also to be able to experience which career they might be interested in. Let's give them exposure to what does it look like to be in culinary arts. What might my job look like as a visual artist? What would it be if I'm if I'm going to go into the mechanical field? And so we know our next steps are building some more of those intentional strategies there, but that's what you're going to see when you walk into some of our middle schools.
And I appreciate you talking about the work that we are continuing to do. As we talked about, the world is ever changing. Some of these careers that our students are going to enter into don't even exist today. And so we have to be on top of continuing to think about how do we provide exposure to things that maybe don't even exist out there right now. And middle school is such a critical time for that exploration. And we know we have some opportunities, but that's an area of focus for us here in the district as well.
It absolutely is. And I think to go along with that, we're also looking at the middle school day and what the structure looks like, because we know that students might need something a little bit different. And so we're trying to think through how do we best, within the time that we have, provide that opportunity for students to meet their needs.
Great. At the high school, I think a lot of people will jump right away to our academies. Can you talk a little bit about how the academies do play into those personalized learning opportunities or pathways? But what other opportunities do we have at the high school for our students who maybe don't want to go into one of those academies to still have some personalization in their education?
Yeah, so as they come from middle school, they would have had exposure to different areas that they might be interested in. And then when they go into high school, they have many more electives that they can choose from. So some students might choose to go an academy approach, which means I know I'm interested maybe in the medical field. And so I'm going to go ahead and take courses that are more aligned to help support me in the future with my medical experience. Those opportunities include options for them to take coursework connected to it. Sometimes there's some college credit connected to it. There's always some type of industry certification that students can get. But then there's also work-based learning experiences that students can do within there. But in addition to that, let's say I don't want to do the academies, but I just want to have exposure in those opportunities. Students can still take those courses. So they're either elective options or they're credits for English or math or whatever it might be. And the state of Illinois just recently started recognizing these. They call them college and career pathways endorsements. So students can take courses, and if you bank up enough points based off their requirements, you get an endorsement for that different pathway on your actual diploma, which is exciting. And so we as a district are responsible for going ahead and submitting and getting approval from the state on the courses that we might have and making sure that they're up to par. In addition to that, students can do traditional learning, take classes how they want to take them. We also have some blended classes. Blended rolled out with a huge number of courses in Huntley many years ago. But since then, we've tightened up our criteria a little bit because we know better about which type of student would benefit from a blended course and not. And so you might see fewer students partaking in blended, but that's because we're trying to be intentional and as students know who they are as a learner in elementary and middle school, who will actually be successful. So we do have some of those courses still running, but we're intentional on which student will be would be successful in those. In addition to that, students can also take courses over at MCC. We are very fortunate to have a great relationship with McHenry County College. Many of our own staff have master's degrees, which allow them to be able to teach college level classes to our students here at Huntley
Right
High
in the
School,
high school, right.
which is so exciting. And then also we have some students who travel over to MCC as well to take those courses. And so students have a wide variety of opportunities. And if they choose to do the MCC route, some students can actually get a dual degree. So when they graduate from Huntley High School, we can end with having our associate's degree as well as our high school diploma. So students have many opportunities at our high school to personalize their track of learning and to meet their needs.
When you think about all of those different opportunities at that high school level, that can be extremely overwhelming for a 13-year-old, 14-year-old going into high school to know what's best for me. And that's why we have to start so early, having them have opportunities to learn, what do I like? What are my interests? How do I learn best? Because right away it might be, I want to take a blended class because I don't have to be there every day. But based on what they know about themselves, they may say, I might want this, but it might not be what's best for me. So when we talk about how we get students to take ownership in their learning and understanding of that, what does that look like and how do we support them?
Yeah, so if we start back, I'm going to go to elementary again, and even preschool. We want to help students start to identify themselves as a learner. Because at the end of the day, our goal is to have students be able to be a productive citizen in society, obviously, to be able to leave our doors and continue on. But then we also want them to have foundational skills in academics. We want them to master that learning because that's important to us. And then we need them to have those relationship skills and those abilities to be able to be successful. So at the elementary level, we start really focusing on how do students learn best. They start to reflect on that. We embed things that we talked about already, our structures of math. How do we have problem-based experiences for students? We've been very intentional in our specials offerings at the elementary level to embed problem-based learning at that level as well. So kids can engage in what they might want to do. So STEM class, which is explore, I guess, is what we call it. And so students are learning science, technology, engineering, and math, and they're able to really do that in code at a kindergarten level. And
it's so fascinating to walk into that classroom, right?
And so when you start to see that and you start to see how that learning is, how they start to learn about who they are as a learner at that young age, we start to build on that more. So then you might see teachers starting to give learning inventories to students. Because for one student, I might like to read and you might want to listen to the audio, and that's okay. And so we start to give kids different ways to access their learning so that they're able to really focus and be able to gain that knowledge. I think one of the things you asked earlier, what's changed in education, that one-size-fits-all approach goes not just with how we build our learning in our different units, it's also in the way kids access materials. And so we have been thoughtful at the elementary grades to start. How do we make sure that if you're a child who might be struggling, you can still learn about the content of maybe the Great Depression, but we're going to find a different way to have you access that learning and then to be able to demonstrate that learning. And so at the elementary levels, we start there. When you go to middle school, we start to allow students to make more choices in that. How do I own my own learning? You'll see students setting goals. They'll be looking at maybe their end of quarter grades at a math test that they might have just taken, at a writing assignment, and they'll start to set some personal goals, and then teachers will have conversations about how can we better move forward that learning to help you be more successful. And at the high school level, we get to where they get to actually choose how I want to learn. And those are all those different pathways we talked about earlier.
So you talked about goals. It's January. Oftentimes people come back refreshed and rejuvenated, and they're setting new goals. In education, though, we want to celebrate what has the progress been on some of the goals we've set before. And maybe we need to refine those. Maybe some of those have already been achieved or accomplished. But that conversation about what are my goals that I have? What are the goals that maybe my educators, my teachers have for me, or for my parents have for me? Where are we at? So a lot of that conversation needs to be about our growth. Where did we start? Where are we now? How can we, when we talk about all these opportunities, know that we're achieving success, not only as a district, but more specifically as an individual student, that we know that what's working for them or what they're doing is working for them, what we're doing with them is working? Talk about that achievement and how we know that growth is occurring.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question. I'm going to start at the classroom level first. And so as a student, when I take an assessment, I'm going to be able to see what was my learning growth on these standards. And so at the elementary level, we have a standards-based approach to that, to where teachers are having conversations about how did you grow in this specific standard? Did I grow from the fall to the winter to the spring, and then even other different parts throughout there? In addition to that, at the middle school level, we layer in a different element of some grades. And so students are held accountable for their learning at that with their letter grade. And so how we celebrate growth is not just on our assessments and what's going on day to day in our classrooms, but we also set some universal screeners where we're able to monitor student progress on those academics that you're talking about. So how are we doing on literacy and math? And we do that K-12. And so then as students get up through their upper grades, we want to start to measure, are you growing the expected rate that we would have? And then also, have you grown more than you did as compared to other peers? And so that's some data that our students and teachers really look at. In each of our buildings, they engage in data conversations. We just finished an institute day at each of our grade level at the different 3 elementary, middle school, and high school. We were able to engage in some conversations about how our students were doing on our last assessments. And so teachers are having those conversations about their students. They are taking that and reflecting on, what do I need to change in regards to my instruction to better meet the needs of the students in front of me, to meet the goals that maybe were set. And then from there, we're going to start to see our buildings will be having their data meetings where teams of teachers come and our principals lead those conversations to help guide, are we really growing? How are we doing with our goals? And so we have our strategic plan goals that we set, and then each building has school improvement goals. And those school improvement goals are discussed at that level with teachers. And then from there, we're able to then start to say, are we moving towards where our end of year goal would be? And so it's we then at the district level actually we have meetings where we talk as principals and district leadership teams, and we look at our data continuously. Every single month, we pull some piece of data in, either from attendance to academics to some type of behavior data, to really reflect and say, are we meeting the goals? What do we need to change now to help impact our students to be better immediately? Because we don't want to wait till next year. Sometimes there's things that we can do better now.
Absolutely. That data is critical, not only for student growth, but for us to assess how are we doing, where do we need to make tweaks or changes or things, whether it's from that tier 1 that we talk about or for individual students. And those goals start at the strategic plan district level and go all the way down to individual children. So I appreciate you talking about that. From a parent's lens, there are these different opportunities. What's happening in the classroom does look a little different from when we were in school, right? And so I know that there are things that we can do to ensure that we're collaborating, being more transparent, really showing what does the classroom look like today. And we have some ideas that we can do so that we know, hey, on a given day, what does math look like, and how can I then support that at home? When we talk about that personalization part, how can parents partner with the schools so that we are ensuring that we have that information about what do parents see about how their child learns best at home, and maybe what courses or pathways they would like to see their child do throughout their career here at Huntley.
Yeah, parents and families are essential to our learning. We know that we have the privilege of having their children in our classrooms every single day, but the learning goes on beyond our classrooms. And so I think some of the things that our parents we find beneficial is open communication. Talk to your child, ask them what they're learning. And when your middle schooler might say, nothing, I learned nothing, push a little more and ask specifically, what'd you learn in math? What did you learn in science? Was there some great activity that you did? And ask those questions, because from there you start to really learn a lot about what a child prefers. You start to identify what maybe their interests might be, and it allows you and opens that door to have conversations about future interests. I think also having that supportive learning environment at home is something that's essential. It's something that having kids feel that they go home and their parents care about the learning and talking about it is important to us. Helping make sure kids are present for us as much as we can when they're not ill, being at school and allowing us to be able to help teach kids that's something that parents can definitely do. But then most importantly, it's celebrating progress with students. Our kids, even the ones that are struggling, that might be having a tough time, when we see an increase, celebrate that, call that out, say, Ms. Jessica, I know that you grew in your literacy and I'm just so proud of you, because then that helps our students begin to see what their efforts have led to and helps them get that reinforcement at home. But then also discuss what are some of the things that you're struggling with. And if there are things that are coming up that maybe a child has not been able to talk to a teacher about, parents should definitely be able to engage in those conversations with our staff. Our staff love having conversations with parents about learning, and they love to be able to provide that other opportunity and perspective to parents about what their child looks like in the classroom and what their interests are. And so I think when we think about that, we need our parents to be engaged, and we appreciate that. And, those communications conversations are important.
And we know that every generation is different, right? And so when we talk about the students in front of us are different, it is because they are from a different generation. Even from, you talked about when we looked at 13 years ago when we started some of our initiatives with the one-to-one, the way that that generation accessed information and obtained information is very different than our learners today. And so we're constantly having to learn about that and change. And I think that's important for our parents to know too, that there are things that are going to be different, and what we learn, we can be able to share resources with them. And I know that the Learning and Innovation Department is often looking at how can we provide more resources to families so that they feel comfortable being able to partner with us. We know our families want to do that, but hey, this math problem's a little different than how my child's coming home and talking about it at home. We've got to arm them with those resources as well. And so we've been talking about different opportunities or ways that we can provide that information, because it's incredible to go into a classroom, whether it's a high school classroom or early childhood, kindergarten level. The things that our children are able to talk about, it makes you smile, right? They really do have a thirst for knowledge and learning. It's just different than we're used to. And so we want to make sure that our staff, our community, and our parents all have that understanding so that we can better support them. Because you said we want them to be productive when they graduate from here, and we've got to stay up on those times. And it's a really fun time to be in education, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
Well, Dr. MacCrindle, thank you so much for being with us today, talking about a topic that we know is going to continuously change. When we say personalized learning environments, it can't be what we're doing today is going to be what we're doing in 5 years or even tomorrow, because it is personalized learning. So again, thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for being part of Huntley 158. And we are incredibly grateful to you and your team for all that you do for our students.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here today.
And before signing off, here's another Huntley 158 fun fact. Did you know that Mae Chesick was an educator and administrator in Huntley School District for 51 years before she retired in 1984. Mae continued to be part of the Chesick family by coming in regularly to work with students, to be part of assemblies, and just be part of the Huntley 158 family before she passed away in 2007 at the age of 102. Shout out to the Huntley Area Public Library for allowing us to use this incredible recording studio. And thank you again for joining us on Raider Roundtable, where it's all students always. Until next time.